Sports Card Nation, the hobby is the people. Weekly news and interviews, it's your number one source. Sports Card Nation, the hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
Welcome to another stocked and loaded episode of the Sports Card Nation podcast, the show that brings you all the important hobby news, discussions, debates, opinions, info, and interviews with key hobby and sports dignitaries. Also, if you're good, you know we are going to give away something. Now, here's the guy that wanted the cards more than the gum. John Newman.
What is up? Happy to be back. Episode 125 of Sports Card Nation is here. Today's guest on today's show is Greg Larson, writer of the Clubbie, a baseball memoir about his 2 years as the Aberdeen Ironbirds clubhouse attendant. That single A team of the Baltimore Orioles, owned by none other than Cal Ripken, the Hall of Famer Cal Ripken Jr. And, it's going to show the less, the book shows the less sexier side, the less glamorous side of the sport. Sometimes I think we think, every baseball player signs a bonus baby contract and they're all doing well, and that's not the case. Something I knew from being here in Syracuse and having the AAA team, which is a lot different than the single A short season league, but it's an interesting read. Definitely recommend. I've read a lot of baseball books in my day, and the fear is whenever there's a new one, is it gonna capture your interest? Is it gonna go somewhere you haven't been before? And honestly, this book did take me, somewhere that none of the other baseball books did. It went into some of the racial divide of baseball between the Dominican players and the American players. We're going to talk a little bit about that during the conversation with Greg. How clubbies have to scrape and scheme and kind of come up with plans to get everything done and to make some extra money. And in many cases, the clubhouse attendant actually makes more than some of the players, and sort of that, relationship and how that all works. He lost his longtime girlfriend over basically the commitment of the job, and we touch a little bit on that as well. So it's a great read if you haven't read it yet. The Clubbie by Greg Larson, and we're gonna cover some of that ground today during the interview. So I think you'll find it very interesting. So without further ado, let's start the show. Time for this week's incoming product releases. Almost double-digit releases this week as far as wax. Again, pandemic still in effect and maybe causing some delays on these releases, but at least according to schedule, we got today, the 30th, show release date. We got 2021 Onyx Vintage Football. Also today, 2020 Panini Chronicles Football and Panini Chronicles Football H2, the hybrid. We got the little bit of a break here, and then on the 5th, we have 2021 Topps Tier 1 Baseball. Also on the 5th, 2020-21 Panini Crown Royal Basketball. Also on the 5th, 2020 Panini Flawless Football. And on the 7th, to close out the week, we have 2020 Panini Impeccable Soccer. We also have 2021 Leaf Metal Football, Hobby and Jumbo on the 7th. And that does it for this week's release. So a little bit of everything. Some baseball, some football, some soccer. There you go.
Pastime Marketplace has a line of graded card cases that are waterproof, airtight, dust-tight, and hardened to protect and organize your valuable collection. Each of our cases come with pre-cut and pre-formed foam, so you don't have to cut and tear the foam when you get your case. The pre-cut foam inserts are sized to hold PSA, Beckett, SGC, and CGS slabs. Store it all safely and securely with a case from Pastime Marketplace. Check them out at www.pastimemarketplace.com.
It's time for the Hobby What's Up, where we go around the hobby world and tell you all the latest news and breaking stories from the hobby we love.
What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up?
All right, anytime I can get Jackie Robinson into the What's Up segment, I'm gonna do it. But legitimate news: the 1952 Topps Jackie Robinson PSA 8 just went for $384,000 through Robert Edwards Auctions, doubling the previous record set less than 2 years ago. 2 months ago, I should say. So it's doubled. And 2 years ago, these cards were going for less than $20,000. So in a matter of 2 years, they've went from $20,000 for a PSA 852 J-Rob to now $384,000. Speaking of record-setting prices, not through an auction, through a private sale, through everyone's favorite PWCC, a BGS 9 0304 Upper Deck Exquisite LeBron James RPA went for $5.2 million. This ties the record for most ever money sold for one card, tied with the Mantle 52 Topps PSA 9 bought by Rob Go. And this now becomes the highest single basketball card ever sold.
A great success.
Speaking of basketball, Luka Doncic has signed an exclusive deal with Panini for his autographs and his memorabilia. So relics and autos, exclusively Luka through Panini. TerraPeak, a seller's analyst tool found on eBay, which used to be a paid service, is no longer paid. It is now free for everybody. If you did sign up for the paid subscription portion of TerraPeak, you will receive a credit and a refund. And, TerraPeak is famous for going past the typical last 90 days of sold listings. It goes further back to kind of gauge what specific cards and items are selling for. So it's a great tool that is now free.
Wow, is very nice.
In this segment, sometimes I like to interject some funny personal anecdotes or stories. I have one here that at least I found funny. You might not be as amused by it as I was. So, headed to Dallas in the back end of May for the Dallas show, and a lot of the content creators are getting together for a dinner. And so I had made flight reservations a few weeks back and wanted to change my flight. I was coming in to Dallas on a Friday, and I wanted to come in after work on Thursday. So I went to change my flight, and I called the Delta line, and they have hold music, which is real music, real songs. So I was on hold for like 20 minutes. And maybe a little bit longer, and I just said, you know what? I'll leave the phone, here on a table, and I'll go over here and just do some productive stuff. And so I got busy doing something else, left it on, my cell phone on speaker, and I was a distance away where I couldn't hear it as well. And then I heard a voice say hello, and I started to go into my spiel about, hey, I booked a flight for Friday. I like to change the departure day to Thursday after 3 p.m. What was available? Can you cancel? All this. I kind of went into this, 40 second, 60 second, thinking I was talking to someone after they said hello. And what it turns out to be was the beginning of that Adele song, Hello from the Other Side. But because I was so far away from my smartphone and its speaker, I heard the hello, because it's a distinct kind of loud hello, thinking that was the customer service agent. And so here I am going into my whole spiel, and the Adele song was playing when I couldn't hear it. So my blonde moment, if you will, but kind of funny. After I realized, after I was kind of done with my request, and I didn't hear a response, and I moved closer to the phone, I could tell what song it was playing, and then the light bulb went on that the hello that I heard was the opening line to that song. So there you go, but funny moment nonetheless. So, and to close out the hobby What's Up segment, we've noticed, or I've noticed, and I think other people agree, we've seen, I know we've talked about some of the records being broken on this segment, but we have seen some things settle down as well. Some, stuff that we were accustomed going for a lot more money. I posted on social media that some bigger auction specific cards were not bringing previous levels, and so that's occurred. And Topps Project 70 just had their lowest print run week since it started. So, is this the start of kind of a settling down? And some will argue that we're already in that period. I think we're just starting. I think. I always say this, I don't want to get political on the show, but there's going to be some things that happen in real world, with politics and policies and tax things and, those scenarios that I think are going to affect discretionary income, including in that rare air space where the ultra rich live too, as it was just announced there's going to be a 40% tax on those luxury folks, if you will. So I think people are going to tighten their belts a little bit here in the next year or two. The hobby's very strong. The hobby's thriving. I just had the two best months sales-wise in the last 2 years, and 2020 was a record setter for me, and 2021 somehow is ahead of that pace, and March and April have been the two best months in the last 2 calendar years. So the hobby's alive and well. So, when we talk about a settling or correction, it's not a crash. It's not the sky is falling. It's not sell all your cards and get out. I'm just saying, I think we're seeing sort of on some of the stuff that's not, limited in print or scarcity. I think we're seeing some of those sort of sales numbers and come back to sort of maybe where they should be. I guess that's where the word correction comes in. So I think we're seeing some things settle down. Your ultra rare cards, like we talked about, the LeBron exquisite RPA that brought $5.2 million. Those things are what they are. They're just rare cards that are going to bring that kind of dough, no matter what era we're just about in, because they're being bought by people who are have that discretionary income. So we'll see how this all plays out. Again, I think the hobby's going to be just fine, but I think certain things that we were used to selling for certain prices aren't going to maintain those levels.
Iron Sports Cards is your #1 source for all your PSA and other grading submissions. Their elite status improves turnaround times. Heck, they even provide the card savers. Their chat rooms provide updates on all your submissions. They also offer wax options and single cards to cover all the bases. Check them out on Facebook at Iron Sports Cards Group or on the web at ironsportscards.com, or even give them a call at 1-877-IRON-PSA. Rob's got you covered.
I know the chunky that left these chunkies. Newman! Open the door, Newman! I know you're in there!
Sports Card Nation. All right, it's time for Newman's Rambling, where I select one question I get each week and answer it on the air.
John, you seem like an astute man.
Thank you, Mr. Walken.
Maybe you can help explain something to me.
Well, I'll give it my best shot. All right, today's question comes by way of Instagram. It's from QQ Wyatt, and he says, "Hey, I'd like to ask an off-topic question. I know you said you don't watch a lot of TV, but when you do watch TV, I'd like to know what are your favorite shows." I like this question. Sometimes we just talk about the hobby all the time. As great it is as it is, we have a life outside the hobby. You're right, as I've said on the show, QQ. I don't watch a lot of TV. I'm doing a lot of different other things, but obviously sports. I'm a big Mets, New York Rangers, Steelers fan, and even Brooklyn Nets. I don't watch a ton of NBA, truth be told. I'm being honest, but anytime the Mets are on and I'm available to watch TV, I don't miss a Steeler game unless I really can't watch and that's very rare. And Rangers, I try to catch as much as possible again when I can. So obviously sports, but as far as non-sports shows that I like, I'm into criminal stuff. So here's I gotta watch how I word that. Forensic Files, Dateline, one of my favorite shows, The First 48, pertaining to homicide shows. I have my uncle was a New York City detective, and when I was younger, that was a field I had considered getting into. I didn't do it, but I find all that stuff, law and forensics and how they, interrogate folks and get them to, spill the beans. And I love all that show. So I'd probably, the non-sports, I'm going to say First 48, Forensic Files, Dateline, those sort of criminal stuff, serial killer shows. I know that's sort of morbid. I don't want anyone thinking I am a serial killer, but I always find that stuff fascinating, what the human mind, so to speak. So there's a little look behind the non-hobby side of shows I like to watch. We're going to hear a word from one of our national sponsors, but on the end of that, we're going to have our conversation with author of Clubbie, Mr. Greg Larson. So, national ad, and then we'll have on Greg Larson.
Sports Card Nation, it's now time to chop it up with our featured guest on the one-of-one card shop guest line. Let's go!
All right, excited to talk to my next guest on the Sports Card Nation podcast. He's the author of a book that's doing very well called The Clubbie. His name's Greg Larson. He hails from Elk River, Minnesota. He's a Twins fan, but that book is about his time as a clubhouse attendant for the Aberdeen Ironbirds, Baltimore Orioles affiliate
at the single A, and owned by someone you might have heard of. He's a Hall of Famer named Cal Ripken. But Greg, first off, welcome to the show. Excellent book, by the way.
Thank you. Double thank you, John. Appreciate
it. I mean, people, I'm here in Syracuse, New York. We have a AAA team. I've been here. I'm originally from New York City, but I've been here in Syracuse now. I'm old, so I got to do the math. Almost 30 years, and I've known two of the clubhouse attendants for that AAA Syracuse team, and so I got some of that inside scoop back from the 90s and even the 2000s when they were there, and then reading your book, with the Ironbirds, it's different at that level. It's not always the same at all these levels. And I guess what I took away from reading the book is just how much is really on your plate to do, from feeding these guys to making sure they got everything they need. And the other thing, I think some people realize, but I don't think everyone realizes that at that level of the minor leagues, not everyone's a bonus baby player-wise. And so a lot of these players are scraping by, and they're playing for the love of the game, because most of them, a lot of them, like you even have jobs in the off season. They need to. And just speak, to that, and I'm assuming just from your experiences, you sort of know yourself at even the upper levels, the differences in your position, and obviously in players as well.
Yeah, for my position, especially at short season, and short season doesn't exist anymore. So the New York Penn League that we're in also doesn't exist. But in short season, the purpose of it was basically to allow new draft guys to get a couple of months of professional ball in after they'd been drafted. So I was dealing with a lot of, at AAA, they have to deal with a lot of the guys shuttling back and forth between the minors and the majors. The guys that they're dealing with have a lot of time in their career. The guys I'm dealing with are completely green, and I had to figure out their jersey. I had to help them do housing situation. So my first year, I had an apartment the team gave me, and at any given time, I'd have 5 guys sleeping in my living room because they didn't have any host families. They had nowhere else to stay, and it was just a very strange set of circumstances that was made most strange by the fact that I realized I was making 3 times as much as a lot of these guys. Like you said, some of them will be bonus babies. Maybe they get a 7-figure signing bonus, like Kevin Gossman in 2012 or Hunter Harvey in 2013. But most of the guys were making $1,200 a month, and I was the guy washing jock straps, and I was making about 3 times as much as them. So yeah, $4,500 a year was not going to last for them.
Yeah. Did they realize that? Did they know you were doing better, at least financially? Did anyone ever did they bring that up to you, or did they sort of allude to, hey, you should buy me this, or but first round's on you? Did they sort of knowing that kind of allude to it at all, or not necessarily?
Never. It was more like there was a fraternity of secrecy among clubbies, at least in the Orioles organization, and now I've come to see once the book comes out, clubbies at large, where there's this perception of clubbies being this hustle guy, this gopher who's always at the clubhouse. I mean, I literally lived in the clubhouse the second year, and those perceptions are true, but included in those perceptions is this belief that clubbies are underappreciated and underpaid. But the fact of the matter is, it's kind of, it was more of a secret that clubbies pretty consistently made hand over fist, to the point where after this book came out, I had a group of clubbies raid my social media pages, mad at me that I was exposing all of these scams that I was running, and which I kind of expected. Honestly, I thought that clubbies might be my biggest advocate in this book, but there's a part of me that was if I was a clubbie right now, this book coming out would literally cut into my paycheck, so I might be upset about it too. But that's changing now with the dues system being abolished, which I think is really good for players. So I think that's great for baseball. So I'm going to be interested to see how that changes once the minor league season gets underway here at the beginning of May. But no, I think nobody knew that I was making so much money, and that was by design.
Yeah, it's funny hearing you say that. I remember a few years back there was I think it was on Fox, like the magician that revealed how the tricks were done, and he got like death threats from other magicians, like don't give away. And so hearing you say all the clubbies kind of, on the message board say, hey, what are you doing? And I thought of sort of that parallel.
I'm like the clubby magician, man.
So, but well, the other thing I took from that too, the book is sort of I don't like the word. It sounded swords kind of dirty, but the scheming. You had to really broker. Maybe that's a better way. You had to broker all these different deals from food services to the delivery, the third party delivery people to the stadium itself, and so. You had to broker all these deals and then factors. Hey, is this worth it to me, to the players? And I thought that was a really cool dynamic that, again, people probably don't realize how many gears are actually turning in different directions to get all this, stuff done.
Oh, 100%. And nobody told me that I had to do that. That was my choice to try and make some money on the top. So the best or most prominent scams that I had were if a visiting team came in. First of all, I had a relationship with the stadium beer supplier, and I would slip him some gear, and he would slip me some beer. And it got to the point where he was getting sick of getting Aberdeen Ironbirds gear, so then I would try to get gear from other teams because that was more rare to him.
Yeah.
So a team like Staten Island Yankees coming into town, I knew their coaching staff really liked to booze it up. So I'd say, hey, I'll get you guys all the Bud Light you want. Just give me a couple of caps and some gear. And then I would give them the beer from the stadium beer supplier. I would take the caps, and then I'd trade it for even more beer. And then I would use that extra beer to give to our coaching staff, and they'd tip me more. I mean, it was just, I had this whole cycle going all the way down to broken bats. I would make guys trade me their old broken bat in order to get a new one. And then I would sell those broken bats up in the club, in the gift shop. So that, the front office didn't, I hope they didn't know about most of those scams, and some of them they kind of aided me in. It's just, that's the world there, man. Everyone's just trying to scrape by.
Yeah, everyone's got to, like you said, survive, do what you got to do, and make the best of what you got to work with. And I love reading all those working parts and how it was. You had to keep track of everything, and even on the other way, in your book you mentioned even one of the food service I was trying to pull get ahead in his own sort of way. It's almost like a chess match, and so everyone's trying to come out ahead. I got a kick out of that and reading all those working parts and. To do that, you got to be thinking on your feet, and it keeps you on your toes. And
oh yeah, I mean, if I was hiring people, I'd be looking for clubbies have to work with all different kinds of groups of people. They have to be financially savvy. They have to have good relationship skills. The thing is that clubby would probably never usually not go into the workforce. A lot of those guys, at least at the major league level, they get into a position like that and they just stay there for decades. Minor leagues, it's a little different, but.
Yeah,
I think it was pretty good job experience, even in salesmanship, everything.
Quick break to hear from one of our great sponsors. But we'll be right back right after that.
What doesn't one of one card shop do? From box, case, and personal breaks, there's always fire being pulled. They offer bulk grading subs, and their large store located in Strongsville, Ohio, offers an incredible selection of sports cards, non-sports, and authentic autographed memorabilia. Steve and family will treat you right. Check them out on Instagram at One of One Card Shop or on the web at oneofonecardshop.com.
Sports
People
Card
think,
Nation
you pen a book, you write all your thoughts down. And then you organize it. Everyone has a different style of authors do books in their own way. And I think there's a perception that you just go to a publisher, say, here's my book, here's what it's about, when can you get this out? And it's obviously, firsthand, it's not, I already knew myself, that's not how it works. And you got 200 no's, I was reading, before you got the yes. And so it's a story, author-wise, it's a story of perseverance. You could at any point you could have said, listen, this book's not going to happen. I wrote it, but it's not going to get published. And but you kept plugging, you kept pushing, and the Clubbie's doing very well. Just speak to that. Were there any moments where you're like, I don't know if this is, this book's ever going to see the light of day?
Of course, yeah. I mean, when I started as a Clubbie, I didn't expect to write a book, but I just started keeping track of notes. Like, I keep a very obsessive journal usually, to the point where, like, John, when you read it, it puts you right in the scene, and there's like specific dialogue, because I had 285 pages of notes after those seasons where I would just obsessively keep track of things. And I thought, okay, in 2014, I went into an MFA creative writing program, and I actually wrote Clubbie as my thesis. And I think I got the first 100 rejections from agents, and I stopped. I went into the ghostwriting world where I was more writing other people's books. And I just, Clubbie just goes on the back burner. I start convincing myself that it's just a passion project. There was one moment, I was at a Lana Del Rey concert by myself, and Lana Del Rey plays an important role in the book because her song Summertime Sadness was popular at the time I was a Clubbie, and it was, our team would play it at the end of every game at a certain point in the season. And I love her as an artist, and I was at her concert, and she started playing that song Summertime Sadness. And I had given up on Clubbie. I didn't think that this book would ever see the light of day. I'd gotten 100+ rejections. And as I'm listening to this song, I'm by myself in this huge stadium. I just thought to myself, like, man, am I really never going to let the world see this book? And am I really never going to let the world know the connection between this song and my book? And I thought that maybe I would die one day, and then that this book would just be some passion thing that I had collecting dust on my hard drive. But after that moment, I think it gave me, it lit a fire under my butt. And I went back and I got 100 more rejections, including my eventual publisher, University of Nebraska Press. They rejected me once before accepting me a second time. And all told, it was 221 rejections over the course of 2 years. And I signed my contract in September 2019, and the book came out this spring.
I think it's a perseverance to how bad you want. We talk, we hear that analogy in sports. How bad do you want this, right? And I think it goes across all sorts of genres and fields and occupations. And so, I mean, you got it done, and it's a great book. And when you get rejections, are they usually just simply not at this time? Are they harsh? Are they just straight to the point? Like, how bad do they, when they say no, how bad is the no, I guess?
The worst no was a no response. That's by far the most common, was the no response. But when people, maybe the worst one is when they would request a full manuscript. And even that, to get a full manuscript request from an agent is a pretty big, it's not a full accomplishment, but it's a big indication that you have something there. So for somebody to just outright reject me based on a query letter, a synopsis, that didn't, it was annoying. But then somebody actually reading the full manuscript and then rejecting me, I take it back. That was by far the most painful. And I'd say that happened a dozen times before I just finally went directly to University of Nebraska Press, which is like a logical home for it. They do amazing baseball. They have an amazing catalog of baseball books.
Well, it's out, and thankfully so. I read it mostly at nighttime. It cost me a couple late nights, as I didn't want to stop, and I was getting into it. It was, hey, how's this going to end? You touched upon with some of the Dominican players, there was sort of that riff. I don't think people realize that. I think people, because there's a lot of Dominican representation in the major leagues, people just assume there's never any issues. But you highlighted some of that. How difficult, you sort of were caught sort of in the middle of that. How difficult was that as a clubhouse attendant to sort of be, in between, if you will, and
sure.
sort of try to be neutral, but you've got to get along with all these guys, just to say,
Oh, of course. A few things. It's such a complicated topic. For some context, when I wrote this book, approximately 11% of Major League Baseball players were from the Dominican, and approximately 25% of minor league players are Dominican. So there's a far higher representation of Dominican players and Caribbean players in general in the minor leagues. So that Dominican culture plays a much more prominent role in minor league baseball. And there are a lot of competing factions between American players and Dominican guys. It boils down to, you could call it racist, you could call it nationalist, you could just call it a rivalry, whatever you want to call it. But it would get to the point where in the first season, guys would argue about everything to music choice, where are we going to play Latin music or are we going to play American music? And at one point, one of the Dominican guys tried to hit one of the American guys over the head with a baseball bat. And it was this whole thing. And like, yeah, in the book, it's kind of funny, but it's also kind of like, what the hell is going on in this world? It's like me being caught in the middle. I mean, I'm not proud of this, but when I first showed up in that world, I was like, damn, this is blatant racism towards a lot of these guys. But nobody's addressing the fact that a lot of them aren't being taken care of by the team. The organization doesn't give them translators. They don't give them financial advice or anything. But then by the end of it, you know, I had the same prejudices that I was disgusted by in the beginning. I had those same prejudices towards the end, where I would say, oh, the Dominicans are just going to take more from the spread. The Dominicans aren't going to tip. Yeah. It's like, well, yeah, no doubt, dude. These guys might be supporting their entire family back home and sending money back home every week, and nobody's translating for them. They're in a new country where they don't speak the language. So it was painful, man, and I did feel like I was caught in the middle of it. But looking back on it now, I think I have a lot more context on what the complexities of that issue really entail.
Yeah. Between the players, you think it was just coming from a place like, hey, this guy's probably going to prevent me maybe from moving up this ladder or having a longer career? Was it viewed as that sort of threat between the players?
Sometimes, because there was this perception that Dominican guys would get more chances than an American guy, which is ironic given the prejudices against Dominican players. But what I found out after doing some research was that more often a Dominican player, you know, at that time they were able to get signed on the July 1st, the first July 1st after their 16th birthday. They could be an international free agent signing. And there was so much competition around signing those players that their signing bonuses were much higher than most of the American guys who were drafted. Particularly because American guys, if they go to college for 4 years, for example, they don't have any negotiation leverage whatsoever in the draft. So they might get screwed for a signing bonus. So part of that was financially motivated, where they felt like, man, American players might think a Dominican player gets more chances just because the organization has already invested more money into them. So it's this sunk cost fallacy. I mean, like I said, it's such a complicated topic, but that's what I perceived from it.
Yeah. No, and I know it's tough. Even I've heard some stories, even from the AAA level with the two gentlemen. I won't mention their names, protect Aaron, but they told me some stories, even at that level, because now at that level you're one step away from the major leagues, and some of the financial stuff you mentioned, even at that level, comes into play. That a team wants to see what they have with someone they have more vested in. While someone who's making a little bit less money has actually been more productive on the field, and so sometimes it can cause some resentment. I think you hit on the head what I've heard even at the upper levels. You mentioned the book. You kind of when you got the job, you kind of were just thrown in there and said, "Here you go," and you sort of had to learn on the fly. At any point early on, did you say, like, what did I get myself into? Did you have any second get, like, should have I done this? Or
yeah, I think each of my seasons I had a moment like that at the very beginning of each season, especially because like my job training consisted of, you saw the book opens with me in Ed Smith Stadium at the Orioles Spring Training Complex. It's like 2 hours of me just getting here's what you do for dues, here's what you do for laundry. The old clubhouse attendant for the Ironbirds was the minor league equipment manager for the Orioles, and that was my job training. Stop in Sarasota on your way up to Aberdeen. I was in Fort Myers at the time. So stop in Sarasota and get like a 2-hour crash course and then show up. I mean, I didn't know. I let the trash overflow for the first couple of weeks before I realized that I was in charge of taking out the trash because I was in charge of every single thing in the clubhouse. It was this feeling where once Mills, I think, started hassling me about getting him perfect pearl baseballs for his pitchers, and I had to negotiate like, hey, we don't have enough equipment. It was such a strange thing. The Orioles didn't want to give more equipment to their players to practice with. It was ridiculous. But then I was caught in the middle saying, Mills, I can't give you more baseballs for your pitchers. And then Mills is like, how can pitchers not have baseballs? And then I have the Orioles equipment manager saying, I can't give you more baseballs. When I saw that, I mean, I just thought, like, this is not... I think my character was cynical at the time in the book. I think I was cynical at the time. Me now, I don't think I'm cynical. I just think that I was disappointed in this world that I really loved and that it didn't live up to my expectations in a lot of ways, and that made me kind of want to run away from it.
Yeah, you kind of caught off guard. You kind of thought it might be one way, and then you saw it. It wasn't. You mentioned Alan Mills. He's a character in his own right. I heard you mention on some other programs after he read the book. He kind of said, "Hey, you made me sort of a bad guy," and you said, "No, I was just." Highlighting your personality and how colorful you were, and you still talk to him, I believe. Did you get a lot other than him? Did you hear from a lot of other like former players or even officials? I know you mentioned in the book you really didn't see Cal quite often, even though he owned the ball club. Have you heard anything like what? Do you know if he's read it? Have you heard even maybe through back channels anything to what his thoughts are on what was in the book?
Yeah, well, a few things. As far as Mills goes, I mean, Mills, he thought that I made him the villain. To me, he was just so interesting. He and I just accentuated. We're so different that we accentuate each other's traits. And I mean, I don't see him as a villain at all. He was like probably one of my favorite people that I met in baseball. As far as Cal goes, so a lot of people don't know this, but Cal Ripken Jr.'s mom was abducted and kidnapped in 2012, in the summer of 2012, my first season with the Ironbirds. And nobody knows. I mean, there's a $100,000 reward out to get any information. Nobody knows the motivation. She died this spring, and still nobody knows what happened there. And so I think Cal had bigger fish to fry, so I never interacted with him. The only thing that I've heard about players, every single player that I've talked to, from guys who are in the book, like Alex Schmarzo, even Mills, who thought he was the villain, he loved it. Schmarzo loved it. Schmarzo is a big character in the book. Sam Kimmel, other guys, Harry Marino, who's now the head of day-to-day operations for Advocates for Minor Leaguers, they all said that they loved it because they're happy that the world can see what that world is really like, baseball fans and non-fans alike. But the only pushback I've gotten has been from front offices. And you talk about back channels. I haven't heard about Cal's perception of it directly, but I have heard from the Ironbirds organization that the Orioles front office is not happy about it and that they haven't allowed the Ironbirds to promote it for that reason. So that's disappointing because I think I don't think I'm particularly critical of that organization. I think if anything, I'm just showing the truth. And if me telling a story about what truly happens in that world offends them, then maybe they need to look at themselves instead of looking at me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I agree. So there's going to be no Greg Larson Day yet at Aberdeen.
Definitely not anytime soon. Which I expected. The second I put pen to paper, I knew. I was like, okay, I'm going to be blackballed from baseball forever. I knew that. That's fine with me. I'm an author, not a clubbie. I just happened to be a clubbie one time, and that's the story that found me.
Yeah. And, like you said, I took that you were telling what the true story of you lived it. You were in that clubhouse and out with those guys, even outside the field, and you were just reiterating your experiences, their experiences. Like you said, if they have an issue, they have to look internally how they do operations, and if they don't like it, clean up your house. What they don't like is it's kind of like when someone gets caught, right? They don't think that the fact that they got caught, not that it happened. So
And especially in a summer like this with all of these changes that I think are a lot of positive changes with the dues system and with increased player salaries, there's still a lot of work to be done. But I think at a time when they think that they're getting a lot of positive PR for the changes they're making in minor league baseball, probably the last thing they want is a story like this being told to put a face and a story on all of the things that are wrong with that world in a lot of ways. And like, I don't want the viewers or the listeners to think it's an expose by any means, but it's hard to read this book and not see like, wow, this is a messed up world.
Well, I mean, I think I would criticize you more, not that I'm in a place to criticize, that if you didn't say what happened, or, you know, if you made up stuff or it came out that's not true, and I just made that up, but I said it was true. I mean, that's not right. You know, you lived it. You're passing your experiences on so other people can know what that was like during the time. And again, this is some years back too. Things can change as well. And that's how you learn. That's how you improve. You learn by trial and error. And so hopefully, if maybe some other teams are also looking at that and say, hey, how do we do business at that level, and what do we got to look at maybe making improvements on.
Another quick break, but we'll be right back with more Sports Card Nation.
Sports Card Nation podcast is your weekly hobby and sports podcast. Now on tons of platforms including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and many more. Listened to in 44 different countries globally, Sports Card Nation is one of the most interactive podcasts around, providing great content, giveaways, and some of the hobby's best interview guests without time constraints. Thousands can't be wrong. We want to thank all the wonderful listeners around the world, our awesome guests on the show, and our tremendous sponsors making us what we are today. Remember, without you, there's no us.
Sports Card Nation is back with Greg Larson.
You mentioned a very sentimental moment during your time there when you got to warm up in the outfield, and you were in uniform, if I'm not mistaken. And just, I wanted to touch on that because I know it's important to you. You didn't spend a ton of time in the book, but I think it was very important to you. Kind of speak to sort of that. I want everyone to read the book, but even if someone who's just listening to the podcast, like how sort of how that came about and your emotions surrounding that spot in time.
For sure. I mean, a big reason why I was even in that clubhouse in the first place was just because I love baseball so much, and that there's a subconscious part of me that always thought, man, am I going to have a Rudy moment where I get to go on the field and like they sign me to a one-day contract and I go 4 for 4, something like that. I never would have admitted it to myself, but that was part of my unconscious motivation for being there. But then it turned out that first season I didn't spend any time on the field. I was just in the clubhouse, only doing laundry, only running deals. And it was the last home game of that season, and I had just gotten my butt chewed out by our coaching staff, Orioles executives, the minor league equipment coordinator, all chewing my butt for how bad of a job I did that year. And I was like, you know what? I was already on the fence about it. Screw it. I'm never coming back here again. So what did I do? I spent the final home game in the bullpen with all the bullpen pitchers who were like some of my best friends on the team because their bullpen pitchers are crazy. Plus, there's no coach in the bullpen, so it's like it's boys' house and anything goes. And they were all whining about having to warm up the right fielder every half inning. And I was just said to them, I was like, dude, what I wouldn't give to just warm him up. And they're like, shoot, dude, just go put on a jersey and do it. So I ran inside, I threw on a jersey, and it was just like the adrenaline rush. The crowd was pretty sparse last home game of the year. Orioles season had started, school year had started. It was just like, or playoffs, I believe, for the Orioles. And so like, I was so nervous, but the next half inning, I take 2 balls out to the right field foul territory. The one ball I try to drop as the center fielder streaks from the dugout to center field. I tried to drop like a lollipop Hail Mary to him on the run. I miscalculated. I short-armed it a little bit, but it got to him. And then I started playing catch with the right fielder, and that feeling of like the lights down. And I'd been on that field before, but wearing a jersey and thinking about there's Orioles executives in the stands in the luxury box seats, and they might be seeing me and thinking, who the hell is number 36? I thought we got rid of Jason McCracken a month ago. But I'm warming up the right fielder, and I just thought, like, man, this is what I've been missing out on. I could have done this at any point. It's minor league baseball. Nobody cares. And so I think a little moment like that was enough to keep me coming back for more for the second season. And then you see, like, in the second season, I'm way more involved, and I take batting practice with the team and all this stuff. And it was one of those things that keeps baseball addicting, you know? Like, it can kick your butt for months straight, but then you have one amazing moment, and you just can't help but keep coming back for more.
Yeah. No, I'm a baseball guy. I played in high school, and I'm a fan, and obviously in cards. And I remember in reading that, you could get that emotion. It's amazing sometimes the emotion you can get from words on a page. You can feel it through the page, as they say. And I knew it meant a lot. I definitely knew when I was going to talk to you about it was going to be something I wanted to ask you about and highlight for you and talk about it. You know, I can imagine, you know, whenever you're a kid, if you're a baseball kid, right, you always, you know, you're in your backyard dreaming that you hit the game-winning homer in the World Series, the ended a la Joe Carter, and you get mobbed at the plate, whatever the moment is. And if that's, you know what I mean, it means so much to whoever it is at that time. I knew it meant a lot to you, and like you said, then parlay kind of into, you know, returning for that second year and being more active and kind of living some more moments. And I wanted to highlight that. So you know,
of course,
being a baseball guy.
That moment led to the amazing moments in that second season, like when I took. You know, our coaching staff the second season was real tight-knit to the point where we would all just stay in the clubhouse together and sleep overnight. Not all of us. In Mills would always get a hotel room, but some of us would just get hammered off of Budweisers and just eat crabs and hang out. It was pretty amazing at first, but then it got to the point where maybe it was a little bit more sad as time went on. But there was one night where Matt Marullo, our manager, took me out in the cages, and he fixed my swing in a matter of 20 minutes. Not even. He gave me a couple of pieces of advice, and then we were hitting balls in the cage. And yeah, I mean, you can't pay for that kind of lesson. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Drinking Budweisers and smoking a Cuban cigar with the manager. I mean, and it's just amazing, dude.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you know, letting us behind that curtain a little bit, and you know, being emotional. Some people can't do that very easily. You know, they're a little bit guarded, but you did. And in reading that, I knew, you know, as a former player, I still play men's competitive softball at 48 years old. So, you know, I know you have a passion for the game. I mean, you ever see yourself wanting to be involved in baseball again? Maybe not. I mean, maybe not as a clubhouse attendant, as you said, but in some other role, maybe. You know, have you ever thought of it?
Oh, I've definitely thought of it, and the answer is a resounding no. I mean, like, I don't have the same relationship to the game I had when I was younger at all. My relationship to it has completely changed to the point where I don't really care how the Twins are doing. I don't really care how the Orioles are doing. I care about interesting stories about the players. I care about things like these minor leaguers fighting for more salary and the possible unionization of minor league baseball. Those things I care about. But I think my relationship to the game has grown deeper in a way where it's more personal, like person to person, as opposed to me loving an organization, for example, or me I'll go to watch a game. I'll be in the press box for the Round Rock Express this summer to keep track of some of those minor league changes. But as far as just going to a game as a fan, watching a game on TV as a fan, I don't see it happening very often.
Yeah. You know, you had a longtime girlfriend that, as a result of your employment, you know, was not anymore. I mean, I know you touched on it in the book. Any regrets? I mean, the book came out of the experience, but,
right.
You know, we all can do that internally, like, hey, I would have did this over, even if it's not, I'm not necessarily not doing the job, but maybe I would have did this differently, or do you do any of that stuff pertaining to that?
No, I mean, as far as that relationship goes, we were together for 3.5 years. She was my college sweetheart. We met in a poetry class in college, and I'd written her a poem to ask her out, and it was just this amazing. The story of it kept us going for longer than maybe we were compatible with each other. Like, John, you saw in the book, like, I didn't want to tell these stories, but I thought in order to tell the story the most complete way possible, I had to tell these unsavory parts of my relationship with her, like me smashing closet doors in arguments with her, and her hitting me sometimes, and all of these things of like these domestic issues that were I wanted so badly to shy away from, but those have been the things that people have latched onto the most, some people, especially players, because what I've come to find is that that's very analogous to a lot of players' relationships, where they have to choose between their girlfriend and baseball, and that's a hard choice to make. And then by the end of it, like, we didn't work out, and I mean, in a lot of ways, thank God, like, we were a terrible match, as I hope you can see in the book. But it wasn't because of her. It wasn't because of me. It was just because of the certain chemistry that we had together.
Yeah. I got to ask you, she's obviously in the book. Have you heard from her that she's read it, or, any feedback?
No, I haven't heard from her since 2014. I think was the last time we spoke, and definitely 2013 or 14. And we still have some mutual friends from college, so I would be shocked if she doesn't know that this book exists. But I haven't heard from her, and I have no idea if she's read it, what she thinks of it, anything like that. No clue. And quite frankly, I'm not interested in talking to her. I don't have anything to say to her. Like,
no, I know. I had to ask. I apologize for the question, but I just.
No apologies necessary. It's a very fascinating storyline, and of course.
Let's hear from another one of our great sponsors, but we'll be back with more Greg Larson after that.
The Sports Card Shop at MoCo is your small-town local shop with a global reach. Conveniently located in New Buffalo, Michigan. We're an easy drive for most residents in Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, and Ohio. Come see us every Tuesday through Saturday from 10 to 5 and Sundays from 12 to 5. Want to shop from the comfort of your home? Give us a call at 269-469-0140 or visit our website at thesportscardshop@moco.com or our Facebook page. Major credit cards and PayPal accepted, and we ship anywhere in the world. We're an authorized dealer for both Panini and Topps, with new sealed wax from both arriving weekly. And yes, we have PSA and SGC graded cards and over 250,000 singles in stock. Be sure to follow us and turn on notifications for posts to Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter so you don't miss out on new arrivals. The Gocher family has been serving this community for over a decade, so stop by or visit us at thesportscardshop@moco.com.
Sports Card Nation is back with more from Greg Larson.
And you mentioned, getting some feedback from some of the guys that were in the book, what they thought. Some were more enamored than others. And then when you said with Millsy, you had to explain to him it's not what you think. It's not as bad as you think. Do you get any other players that say, hey, how come I wasn't more in this book? Or how come you didn't tell this story? Remember this? Why didn't that have you got any of that? Like, people disappointed that, like, this didn't make it, maybe, or anything along those lines?
I was considering that might happen, but it actually hasn't. Even I mentioned Harry Marino, who is now at the head of Advocates for Minor Leaguers, which is a group of lawyers trying to fight for unionization in minor league baseball. He was not characterized in the book because he and I were not close at all when we were working there. It's this weird thing where some people have asked me, so why isn't Trey Mancini in the book more? Why isn't Mike Yastrzemski more in the book? Because those guys eventually became, they're now major leaguers, and they were on the Aberdeen Ironbirds at the same time I was. And I say, look, I was friendlier with guys who weren't very good. That's all there is to it. And whoever is characterized in the book is a byproduct of whoever I spent the most time with. Yeah. And it just so happens that was like the trainer and the pitching coach and some of the bullpen guys and the catcher and these kinds of guys. It's like the dudes who were more The dudes who were better at baseball did not spend a lot of time BSing with the Clubbie.
Yeah. No, I get it for sure. I love the book. I mean, I got to ask you: is there going to be? You're an author, obviously. I'm going to assume there's going to be another book. Might it be another baseball book?
Somewhere down the line potentially, but I feel like I said, at least right now, I said everything I have to say about baseball in this book. And right now, I can show the audio.
Yeah.
Listeners can't, but I'm writing my next book. It's a novel. So Clubbie is a memoir, but it's told in scene like a novel might be, but it's all nonfiction. This is a fully fictionalized novel that I'm working on. I'm about 40% of the way through. It's a love story based on an experience I had last year during the pandemic where I was quarantined with somebody, a woman I just met, and we got quarantined together having known each other less than 2 weeks. And it's all about, it's a fictionalized version of that experience. So yes, another book is on the way.
Yeah, but there will be some truth in there as well, based on.
Oh yeah,
I like it. Well, Greg, I appreciate you giving some time to us. Those out there who haven't read Clubbie, and I've read a lot of baseball books, and that's always my fear, is when I read a new one, like, is it going to be different than, what I've read before and a lot of other, and it was. And like I said, it cost me a couple late nights and tired mornings, but I think that's a testament to how great and how interesting the read was. And as someone who read a lot of books in that genre, it was different. It was different in a good sort of way. And definitely, if you're a baseball fan on any level, I mean, just even if you're a major league fan, you don't care about it was sort of eye opening. And I knew a lot of that stuff, yet I learned even more stuff that I didn't know to that extent. And all, like you said, all those dynamics and relationships and all those working parts and all the deals that are getting brokered on so many different levels. It was definitely a great read. So anyone out there listening, if you haven't read Clubbie yet, highly recommended from me. Go out there and get it. It's interesting. I can't, it's not my fault if you're up late and like I was, and get a few less hours sleep. It's but that's a testament to how good it is. I always give our guests, Greg, the last say, whatever you want to plug, promote. I know you mentioned the next book that you're working on, but your websites, any social media, where they can, I just told everyone to get Clubbie, where they can and how they can go about doing all that stuff. You got as much time as you want. So
cool. The best place to get copies of the book, the easiest place is Amazon, but you can get a signed copy from my website, clubbiebook.com. That's CLUBBIE book.com. And you can see videos from my podcast, the Clubbie podcast. You can see extra deleted scenes content, which has been very interesting to see people's responses to that. And you can see pictures from the time with the Ironbirds, all kind. You can connect with me, email me, join my newsletter, everything at clubbiebook.com.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention that too. You do in the podcast. I've watched some of them, and it's definitely fun and interesting. And so, sort of, an extension of the book, in real time, and it's fun. I definitely urge anyone to check that out as well. So
awesome! Thank you, John.
That's a wrap on another edition of the Sports Card Nation podcast. Thank you to all the awesome listeners out there. Without you, there is no us. Thank you to all our great guests who drive this show, and also our wonderful sponsors who help us produce the great hobby content every week. Remember, another Hobby Quick Hits episode drops every Monday, and Sports Card Nation returns again next Friday. If you like the shows, we appreciate those positive reviews. Be well, and always remember, the hobby is the people.
It's over, Johnny. It's over!